hiccups along the way. And it will be recorded, as you might have just heard, along the way as well. So if there's questions you have or something you want to look back on, I think there's a way that we'll send out information to go look at the recording. So we're going to go through the presentation. We're going to try to take questions at the end. I think we're wanted to see if we could do that through actually the chat feature. So if you have questions along the way, go ahead and type them in at any point along as we're going through the presentation, and we'll kind of run through them at the end. So those are a couple of the ground rules. We're joined here in our conference room by a variety of city staff, and we have Megan Siren from the City Manager's Office, and Laura Fickle from Economic Development, and Paul Yunker with other duties as assigned. So we'll just run through the presentation. As we go through the agenda, we're going to go a little bit on background, talk a little about the vision, go through opportunity for this particular site, and talk about the submittal requirements and what kind of information we're looking for, timeline, and then the Q&A time. So by way of background, if you're not familiar with the city of Rancho Cordova, it is the second largest employment center for the Sacramento region. So we have a pretty good amount of jobs, and then balanced by our existing community. The city is only 16 years old, so the city was formed only 16 years ago. Obviously, the community's been around a long time before that, but a relatively new city, and really pride ourselves on being young and innovative, and so that's kind of what we're also looking for as part of this proposal. So background of how we got here. In January 2018, City Council identified a civic center / community center as a priority. We held a visioning session in May 2015, May 15th, 2018, and then had a subsequent visioning session in August of 2018. And really, I think one of the biggest parts of those visioning sessions is what we are not being as a civic center is any city functions or city hall or city kind of uses. So when we talk about civic center, a lot of people think about it as a city hall feature or a city hall function, but that's really what not this is. And so it's kind of transitioned a little more to, as we call it, a community center, or a mill station district, as it's kind of named in the offering letter. So at the fourth visiting session, or fourth session, we had some conversations around gap and needs, and that was really all around the arts and recreation piece. So as you look at all the different uses that are still in kind of the desired for the city from a community space standpoint, it's something that we looked at as far as what that gap might be. And I think as part of this process, and that was where we also talked about transitioning a little bit to a little bit more focused on a public-private partnership type model, instead of the city kind of looking at building a community center on our own, but looking at the whole property and the whole site to trying to maximize the city's investment and the city value by partnering with some private opportunities. So we're hoping that this process and this kind of will provide a better future definition of what this project will become, and really wanted to use this process to kind of further test the market viability of the different uses that the city is interested in. So on the vision, as I kind of mentioned, the public sector, private sector, and then common interest, this is really, in my mind, a really focused P3, public-private partnership opportunity, understanding what the community needs are, along with what the private investment opportunities might be. The vision, the Mill Station District envisioned a flexible gathering space to incorporate a combination of some potential elements, and we would consider these all community elements and community benefits. So cultural, performing arts, art exhibit space, museums, anything kind of that has a cultural component was talked about and the city was interested in. Potential for recreation, so whether that's basketball courts, flexible meeting space, some craft maker space, all those things remained on the list for what the city was interested in. Also, some interest in commercial and residential. So this is where we think the potential private interest and private market will come in, whether that's a multifamily residential site, a conference center, a cafe, restaurants, mixing in those commercial and residential private market-focused uses in with potential community uses. I think a big piece of this interest that you saw from council was around making sure there was a couple of things. One was flexible space, so whatever is developed, having an ability to kind of be multiple uses and multiple things was important. And then making sure there was a public gathering space, so an outside, outdoor, public gathering space that folks could use, that the adjacent Folsom Lake College campus could use, that the community could use was an important piece. So I think that's a theme, is multi-use and also outdoor gathering spaces are a couple of big ones. You're probably going to ask the question of what are the priorities, what do you want more? And I think would like to hear from you a little bit on what's potentially market-driven, what are our potential options. I think, as I mentioned, some of the themes, we're not going to prioritize these different uses for you, but we will say flexible use, outdoor space, a catalyst project for Folsom Boulevard. So this is along one of our commercial corridors, and we'd like to see this as a catalyst project. So let that be your lens looking at this opportunity. And then it being market-driven. So we want to make sure that the market has the ability to weigh in on what is, of these kind of interested community use, has some sort of market viability. And I think with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Laura Fickle, who's going to kind of run through the opportunity in a little more site detail itself.
Okay. Thanks, Micah. Yeah. Okay. So the opportunity, and hopefully some of you had a chance to look at this already, but this is an almost 10-acre site on the north side of Folsom Boulevard, adjacent to Folsom Lake College, with about 3,000 students and growing. The vacant land next to it is planned for expansion for them. On the south side of Folsom Boulevard is one of the 5 busiest stops on the Gold Line for Sac Regional Transit, with about 2,500 riders a day, and also growing. And then there's right now that the RT site is activated by the Mills Arts and Culture Center. So that's just to give you kind of a geographical lay of the land, where this is situated. It's also in an opportunity zone. If some of you are familiar with that, tax deferment mechanism, and it's also a transit-oriented development site. There's a lot of what I just said. The city will consider zoning changes for the right project to make it feasible. So keep that in mind when you're getting creative with your ideas. It's very accessible. Obviously, like I said, across from Mather, and then on Folsom Boulevard, the vehicle count's about 31,500 every day. We also are very close to 32 miles of the American River Bike Trail, so people here enjoy a very active lifestyle. So we'd like that to reflect in some way in this project. And then we also, like Micah said, second largest employment market outside of Sacramento. These demographics are based on our planning area and then beyond. So just some benchmarks to to measure against. And then these psychodemographics are pulled from a gap analysis that was done. It is included, you can find it in the 4th visioning session on the project background site, so you can look further into these demographics. Now on to submittal requirements. Would really like you guys to, give us a general concept of a general concept or ideas, but you do not need to provide detailed site plans at this time. We also would like you to demonstrate a financial capacity to develop the project, and then we'll obviously consider multiple public-private partnership financing with the Opportunity Zone and TOD, the transit-oriented development funding that might be available. You know, there's lots of opportunity there. If you have 3 representative projects or similar scale and type that you can reference, that would be helpful. And then also including a public agency reference that we can vet. And then I've also included my contact info there. And please make sure you'll want to request a Dropbox link from me to upload your submittal to. Regarding the timeline, the submittals will be due by September 20th. And then we've left it vague on purpose, but we will be reviewing applications or the submittals, and then we'll notify any selected development teams in the fall, and then from there we'll narrow it down and present to council. Again, I just want to remind you all that this presentation is being recorded, and we are going to post it online for you to reference at any time. Does anybody have any questions at this time? So we're going to look at the comment box. And we'll start at the top. At the very top.
That's it.
Okay, we're not seeing any questions, but maybe since, well, there are 35 people on the line, so it looks like. So maybe we'll try to do this since we're not seeing questions in the box. We'll try to unmute everybody and give everybody the opportunity to try to ask a question one at a time. So maybe, and I don't know if, Jordan, if you can unmute everybody.
I can try to unmute some people and see if that'll open it up.
Okay, Jordan, you're a little crackly there, but I think I heard you're going to open it up.
So hopefully we'll open up some questions here.
Hey, Jordan, I think yours has some feedback, but give me yours maybe, Jordan. But I did see a question as far as the next door college. Folsom Lake College is the junior college, the next to the site, the Rancho Cordova Center for Folsom Lake College. And I would say that the students, most of them commute. It's not, there isn't residential provided, although there has been conversation about that might be a good fit for that site is student housing for the college. So do you have an estimate of what acreage should be allocated to public civic space? I think we do not. I think it really is about what kind of the market can provide. So I think there is, when we are, as we talked about, actually we didn't mention the $35 million that we've talked about the city contributing to the project. I think that there is a desire to have some set-aside community space for that investment. I do know that in the past visioning sessions, there are some architectural site drawings that show kind of potential massing on the site, potential uses. So I would say take a look at that, but I think we're open to ideas on how much space is being allocated to specific space. The next question, what is the context format of contribution from the city? How much is the $35 million attributed to the land contribution? So actually the $35 million is in addition to the land. So the land, it will be both, I would say city contribution is both the land and the $35 million in addition to the land. So that's the easy answer for that one. Do you have any idea of acreage inch for the mixed income housing? Similar to the site plan or kind of acreage for the community space. I think that's up to the proposal and up to the group submitting to decide what makes the most sense. There are heavy emphasis on performing arts concepts. Is this the still primary thought? I would say performing arts and I would say and visual arts, so it's not just performing arts, but visual arts, was a key component and was a piece that was analyzed as part of the gap analysis. So I would say that still is a big interest point for performing arts, but that will be up to what can be actually used and operated. So I think we want to provide some context to not just building space for space, but what's the ability to actually operate and who's going to run the space, who's going to operate the space as part of your thought process. Any income target regarding multifamily residential? I would say that we're interested in probably, I would call it mixed income. So I would say we're not leaning one way or the other, whether it's just market rate residential multifamily or just affordable or rent restricted. I think we're interested potentially in seeing the opportunities for both. So I think mixed income would be an interesting approach. That being said, I don't think if it was one or the other, I think we would evaluate all proposals. Will the city consider phasing of the project subject to? Yeah, I think if it comes to phasing, I think we would consider phasing. I think we would have to really understand the long-term financial model under that and come up with some clear kind of expectations and phasing of the project, but we are open to some phasing. Yes, I did say that the city would donate the land and offer $35 million as a contribution to the project. So other than land and $35 million, city consider occupying, supporting operations. So I think when it comes to public uses in the kind of community center piece of it, I think the city doesn't have kind of city operations that could potentially use it. I think we would. It would be interesting to see what other community uses that might be interested, whether it's local nonprofits or potentially preschool space or the college, even being a user of some of the space. So I think from a city standpoint, we do not have a facility need at this point, but I think we have a lot of other potential community partners or other institutions that could potentially be a user. Is residential requirement? I would say the next one is residential requirement. No, residential is not a requirement. I think the city is open to what kind of experience the development community or developer group is interested in and what may work. I think we're open to, as was talked about actually in the different work sessions, I think residential was a conversation and it wasn't a definitive yes or no for residential as part of the project. So you said we pride ourselves on being young and innovative. How innovative is innovative? That is, would you consider concept challenges you're very present in our fee structure? Of course, it was compelling, say, making the project entirely forward if the structure were changed. Is there any other, is that the last part of that question? So as far as what I think that is asking is availability of making the entire project affordable. I think we're not opposed to that, so I think that we want to see what the different alternatives or potential concepts come in to see what the different alternatives are. So I think when I say we're young and innovative, I would say we're open to new ideas, and as we go through the process, we'll be looking at kind of the different options that may present themselves. Next, with the proper team and acceptance, will the city work on varied bond approaches to achieve its goals with developers? So yes, I would say potentially the $35 million obviously does not give you the entire project cost of whatever the project may be. I think when it comes to the different financing options and whether it's bonding or leasebacks or whatever it might look like, I think we're open to the different tools that are out there when it comes to financing the larger project. I think we just wanted to be clear kind of what at least our conversation was for our kind of, I guess, cash contribution might be to the project in the $35 million. Also, say the city gets to keep its $35 million. I don't think there's intention for that $35 million as being paid back to the city. It's not a loan. I think this is something that we would like to spend in the community to be a community benefit from a project standpoint. So, what's the source of source of $35 million might be a combination of general fund for the most part. We might look at different financing options, but that's the number where the city, as far as felt we had the appropriate wherewithal to easily come up with the $35 million to use for this project. It'll probably be a source of some cash, some bonding. A big part of the source for actually this $35 million came out of a tax measure that was passed a few years ago called the Community Enhancement Fund. And that really is a big source of this funding source, which part of that measure, or most of that measure, was really to use dollars to reinvest in the community. So it's a separate source for us as far as a tax measure that we're using to do catalyst and capital legacy projects within the community. Prevailing wage, so the city portion, obviously with the city funding, whatever the project may be, that would be subject to prevailing wage. We'd have to get into the details of the projects and kind of funding sources and who's building what to determine kind of what that impact is on the overall project. But obviously if we use $35 million to do some sort of community building as part of it, that would be subject to prevailing wage. And it would be a grant, not a loan, has been the concept. Now, you can propose a loan if you'd like, so I mean, we're open to whatever concepts may, in your mind, think is most competitive, but we've been talking, this conversation's always been about talking about the $35 million as a contribution or as a grant. In your request for information, there was many references to pertaining to wellness. Can you expand on that, please? Well, I'm going to guess that kind of the wellness kind of piece comes to community benefits and whether it's mental health facilities for that we've seen come up in conversations for the community to recreation and those types of activities. So I'm going to kind of guess that pertaining to wellness would be more about community benefit and community health. Even like food access, can be talked about as community health and those pieces. So that's my best answer to that question. Please give more specific name of the wellness catalyst capital legacy portion of the $35 million. So I would say, on that piece, as far as the $35 million is basically the city's contribution. What you may want to look at is the additional background information on the past presentations to the council, the staff reports, the gap analysis that was done. So there's a lot of background material on kind of the interest of kind of the catalyst and capital legacy portion of the project. Where does the city stand on RENA? So that's a really good question. It is actually a RENA site, and so depending on what the project concept is, we might need to look at the RENA numbers, but we do have a RENA attributed to this site, and like most communities probably across the state, it's a number that we're all looking at. So clarifying wellness, that there are design standards associated with wellness and construction certification. Okay, so clarification on wellness, there are design standards, et cetera, associated with wellness and construction certification. I'm not really sure how to answer that question, but I will say, the gap analysis that was done for recreation and arts will be available on the website coming up shortly. We're finishing up those two studies. Some of the general information that studies you can find in the last presentation to City Council, but the more detailed studies will be uploaded to the website soon. So, as was already answered later, the RENA stands for Regional Housing Needs Assessment, and that's where communities are asked to make their fair contribution to the needs for housing, for low-income housing.
And this site had a low and very low income RENA assigned to it.
Yeah.
That we would have to remove if that housing wasn't built.
Right. So if you didn't hear that, there is some RENA, very low and low income housing identified for this site. If there is no low or very low as part of the project for the site, we would have to find another location for that allocation. Are you open to having a combination of general occupancy, family, and senior housing? I think we're open to kind of what people think makes sense for that site. I think big picture-wise, you're talking about a site that's on a regional transit site, and when it comes to transit-oriented development, this is probably one of the biggest acreages and vacant land available on our Sacramento light rail system. So it, kind of in combination with that and what fits with the community need and the need kind of for making the project pencil and work, I think we're open to seeing what those ideas are. Will there be any points associated concepts that are scalable to the other two on the boulevard locations or to the other parts of the city? I think when you kind of talk about points, I think what you're talking about is making this a catalyst site. And so when we talk about the impact on Folsom Boulevard and the other two, we have two other vacant sites on Folsom Boulevard that are much smaller that the city owns. But I think when we're talking about the points or the associated benefit, we're going to look at the project and see what kind of multiplier a catalyst project can be on on this project to impact the rest of Folsom Boulevard. So I think there will be quote-unquote points associated with that, and that'll be something that will be looked at, I'm sure, by staff and city council when they look at the projects. Are there additional costs on the development side being a public-private project with your city? So I'm guessing that might have to do with maybe project labor agreements or something, as far as we don't have any additional costs associated with a public-private partnership agreement other than what we're statutorily required to with public dollars in building construction projects. Can you share what the RENA allocation for the site is? It would be helpful. So I think we're happy to share. Maybe we'll make a post onto our website that will have what the current RENA allocation is on that site, so that everybody can have access to. So we will update our website with that information. We can also send out an email to everybody on the call to let you know what that site is, what the current allocation is. Has the city discussed pertaining to density mix within RENA and the other uses? So I think that's probably a question pointed on to kind of the ability of the density of the project itself. I think there is some current zoning out there that, has some density, numbers associated with it. I think, as was discussed by Laura, I think we're open to looking at the underlying zoning if there's some projects that we like or we think make good sense, that we can look at the underlying zoning. But there is currently some zoning, associated with that site, and some densities. Not low dense by any, but probably more of a medium density residential kind of site. But we're open to different ideas. Well, look, somebody was helpful and posted the RENA allocation link in the chat box for everybody. Can you expand on the city's financial expectation or goals for the site long term? So I think, one of the things that the city, is concerned about, I think, is the $35 million to contribute to the project. One of the things we're looking at or want to consider is the long-term operating costs for whatever is built. And so I think looking at the expectations of goals for the city long-term, I think best case scenario is we have no long-term operating commitment to whatever the community use is. But I don't think that should hold anybody back as far as wanting to submit. If there is some ongoing operating subsidy to whatever the uses might be, I think the city is open to some ongoing subsidy for keeping some of the community operations there. But I think ideally, from a city staff standpoint, we would love to see kind of a market rate and market sustainable project built that doesn't have any ongoing subsidy to it. So that's kind of our long-term goals. I think that's all the questions that we're seeing. Is there anybody that wants to try to talk all at once over the conference call? All right. Not hearing anybody, but maybe you've been muted too, so who knows. But if you have additional questions and follow-up, I think moving forward, Laura is the point of contact for questions, for submitting your proposals, for getting information on the Dropbox site. So Laura's information is on the slide deck and on the website for you all. And so we're glad and hopeful that you will continue to participate and look. We're getting some last-minute questions in. If we opt in, could we get a list of attendees? I opt in. I think we'll have to check. I don't really know what the capabilities of this system, but I think we're happy to provide that. Will you be coordinating a site tour? That's a good question. I think we are open to a site tour and probably should think about doing one. So I would say stay tuned. There might be some information on a site tour if I think that does make some sense. So I think we'll try to schedule availability to go out on site for people who are interested. With that, I'm seeing no more questions being typed in feverishly, and we'll continue to be looking forward to all of you participating in the process and submitting your interest. So thank you very much.
Jordan, very helpful. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you for your call and your business. Assistance is just a moment away.